Delighted to have Filipe from Registry Aruba, Len from Bermuda, Paolo from 2Reg, and Simon Williams from the Isle of Man Aircraft Registry. Simon very kindly wanted to give everyone Isle of Man kippers, but they got held up in customs.
Thanks for that.
Okay, let's start. It's great to have 4 different registries here, all vying for your aircraft. Let's start with a nice question. Let's look at the people. Len, how did you end up in business aviation?
Is this working? Hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. I was a pilot in Canada for years, and then I worked for Transport Canada as in flight safety oversight, and then with ICAO for 14 years, and I've been in Bermuda for the last 6 years. That's it.
And what attracted you to Bermuda?
Bermuda? Well, the Gulf is very nice there, and no, it's a great place to work. So it's warmer than Canada for sure.
Although you can say that about almost any country. Even the Isle of Man is wetter than Canada. Simon, how did you end up?
Well, I've been an aviator all my life. I started by flying in the Royal Air Force for 16 years on helicopters. Then I followed a traditional route and went down the airline route, but I ended up at the UK Civil Aviation Authority and very quickly got involved with business aviation because I saw a gap there from the UK regulatory point of view that business aviation, this great industry of ours, probably needed a little bit more support. So I spent 4.5 years there working with business aviation industry quite closely, and from that I got headhunted into my current role.
Filipe?
Well, I started in the Portuguese Civil Aviation Authority 15 years ago, and there I witnessed the increasing of NetJets, which is actually is Portuguese-based operator, and I was very much involved in the certification of the aircraft. Then, when I left the Portuguese CJI, I joined a couple of boutique operators, small operators, which gave me some knowledge about this area.
Paolo?
So actually a bit of a strange answer for me, but I'm not really familiar with the business aviation, so that's why I'm here at this conference, to be honest, to learn more. My background is more on commercial aviation, engineering departments, but with the bigger aircraft, so with commercial. Also, 2Reg is learning more and more on how to be better represented into the commercial aviation. So this is a great opportunity for me. But 2Reg is, at the moment, very much focused on the commercial aircraft rather than business jet aviation.
Okay, for the few people in the room who aren't aware of the constitutional status of Guernsey, do you want to take us through how it works?
Okay, yes. So, straight away, the difficult questions here. So it's quite simple, actually. It's 2Reg was born. 2Reg, first of all, is the brand name of the bailiwick of Guernsey. So about 7-8 years ago, the government of Guernsey decided that it was probably a good idea to have an aircraft registry. However, they didn't want to invest themselves directly, but they had a tender to run the registry, to create, to basically prepare all the legislation and to run the registry. This tender was actually won by, basically my company, CJI Aviation, and we spent, 3 years with the team in building all the regulations for the registry. The first aircraft was actually registered in December 2013, and a month ago, we registered aircraft number 500. The agreement between CJI and the government is quite simple. So we report to the registrar and to the DCA, and our team is basically doing all the background work. We keep the legislation up to date. We comply with all the requirements of ICAO, and we report through, of course, the States of Guernsey to the UK DFT. So that's the setup. It's a 30 years contract. Well, we only have left 24 years now, right about at my retiring age. So it's actually mentioned as a good, basically a good solution for both parties, and I think we said something a bit different than all the other registries.
Okay, just let's put a vote up, because you mentioned that you're part of the bailiwick of Guernsey. Should we ask the audience if they know what that is?
Don't worry, not many people know Guernsey, but Guernsey is actually the combination of 4 states. There are 65,000 people living in Guernsey. It's actually reporting to the Queen of England. There is their own, Guernsey has its own government. And in terms of registry, we report to the UK Department for Transport.
Okay, so Len, Bermuda. Explain, what is Bermuda, apart from an island?
Bermuda is an overseas territory of the United Kingdom, but when it comes to aviation, Bermuda exercises state-like functions on behalf of the United Kingdom, and that's through legislation in the UK. So we are essentially a state. We were audited by ICAO last month. We had a full audit as if we were a state. And Bermuda's registry has been in place since 1932, was the first aircraft was registered in Bermuda. And for the last 20 years, we've had the registry. We are both the authority and we're the registry. We don't have any company involvement. All employees are directly employed by Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority.
And is there any plans for Bermuda to exit the United Kingdom? Is there Brexit?
No.
Okay, Simon, do you want to explain the Isle of Man? It's a beautiful island covered in cloud.
We do get plenty of weather. That's certainly true. So it's from a geographical point of view, it's situated between the United Kingdom mainland and the island of Ireland. It's a Crown dependency. The Isle of Man Aircraft Registry was set up on the 1st of May 2007, and that was the main focus of that was to be a cost-neutral springboard for business aviation to flourish both locally and internationally. So we're now in our second decade of operation. As a Crown dependency, we are fairly independent. I still, as the Director of Civil Aviation, I am still accountable to the United Kingdom Department for Transport. But last year we achieved royal assent from the UK, so we are now able to draft our own aviation legislation, which is a great opportunity for us, I think, to be up to date with the latest ICAO and European and international requirements. We focus mostly on private corporate operations. That's where our specialism lies. We don't do commercial at this stage, but that matter is always under review.
Nice to hear a cost-neutral springboard, whatever that is.
Well, to answer your question, we're not a profit centre. That's the point. Our business model
You're
is
loss-making.
We break even. Otherwise, I'd be going to jail.
Do you have a jail on the Isle of Man?
Oh, yes. And you're going there soon.
I don't want to get extradited to Douglas. Filipe, Aruba.
Well, Aruba is a very nice place. It's an autonomous territory of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but it has as autonomous territory, it has its own set of rules and government, and these are actually what governs the air navigation and air ministerial orders for the aviation in civil aviation in Aruba. Actually, the authorities, the Aruba DCA, Department of Civil Aviation, And the Registry of Aruba is a partner of the Aruba DCA to liaise, to deal with customers, has its own set of teams of inspectors, and helps also with the regulations and setting the regulations of Aruba.
Okay, we've got a great question from the audience. It sounds like a joke. What's the difference between a bailiwick, an overseas territory, and a crown dependency? And we might let one of the many lawyers in the room answer that over lunch. If you're unfortunate enough to end up next to a lawyer who wants to answer that over lunch. Question from the audience. For each of your registries, what citizenship requirements do you have? Simon, do you have to be an EU?
Fairly standard. I mean, our initial requirements are based on the same ones as the UK, so we try and make that as broad as possible. We have just broadened that even further to include China, the US, and other countries as well. So we're trying to broaden that as much as we can. Why? Because business aviation is a truly international business, and therefore we've got to try and cater for an industry that is spread across the globe. One of the advantages we've now got with being able to repatriate our aviation legislative process is that I'm now writing the rules based on ICAO requirements, but also it's now an opportunity for me to address what I would say are more, say, commercially focused aspects and broaden the appeal that the island has to offer. So I'm hoping to open it up right across the globe, given current political circumstances.
Anything different to that?
We're essentially a European Economic Area and the Commonwealth, and you can incorporate a company in those areas as well and be eligible to register an aircraft.
As far as Tourage is concerned, there are no real limitations. But for sure, every time that we register an aircraft, we do a full check. Well, we have to treat it that very seriously. So that is definitely something that we do for every aircraft registration.
The same. We don't have any particular requirements.
Paolo, you've told us 500 aircraft. How many of those are business jets?
I think we have registered about 30 or 40 max number of business jets, so very few. Our market is the majority of the aircraft being registered under Tourage are commercial aircraft, which are being transitioned from one lessee to the other. So our biggest market is this sector, definitely followed by business jets. We have helicopter. And in Guernsey, there is quite a big installed base of small aircraft, basically, flying within the islands. But again, the majority of our business is on commercial aircraft. So maybe not everybody is familiar with what I mean with the commercial jets. So when a commercial aircraft has terminated the lease with one operator, has to be normally moved into a parking or moved to another operator. In many cases, there is a transition phase during which the aircraft needs to be modified, ferry flown, or sometimes parked. In these cases, many big lessors are using Tourage to facilitate the transition, the modification, the parking, whatever has to be done on the aircraft. And that's the majority of our work. If I may add one more thing, we are obviously registering aircraft, but we're also providing AOC since May 2016.
Len, how many aircraft have you got?
Bermuda currently has over 900 aircraft on the registry. Again, largest number of our aircraft are commercial aircraft, but we're not the AOC holder. The Russian Federations are the AOC holder. The aircraft are registered in Bermuda under an Article 83 BIS arrangement, and then we have the business aircraft.
Do you just want to explain how BIS arrangement works?
Well, essentially, because of financial risk concerns in the Russian Federation, and also when they transition to Western aircraft, Maintenance programs are quite a bit different. So historically, Bermuda has been in Russia since 1999. And essentially, Article 83 bis, which is part of the convention, I don't want to sound like a lawyer now, but again, it allows you to transfer responsibilities. However, Bermuda does retain, so we transfer licensing to the Russian Federation, but we retain all the responsibilities for airworthiness. So obviously our airworthiness world is quite large.
And then how many business jets?
We have about 110 business jets.
And how many people do you have working?
Oh, we have perhaps 47, I think, in Bermuda. We have a large office in Moscow, and we have inspectors, much like the other registries all over the world. We have a full-time inspector now in Shanghai, so that's been a recent development.
So the Isle of Man Aircraft Registry, we just focus on business jets. That's what we do. So private stroke corporate business jets. In terms of numbers, now we're in our second decade of operation. I've kind of moved the focus on from our growth years, but since we're being asked, so our numbers fluctuate between about 420 and 450 business jets actually on the register. In terms of the number of aircraft we've registered since we started in 2007, we've passed the 1,000 mark, so we're up at about 1,050, something like that. But our focus really is on private business jets.
Same. Aruba has, for business aviation or general aviation, a little bit above 120 aircraft. I mean, turbojets above 5,700 kilos. We have a small number of AOCs, but this is now getting. It's growing. It's what the Aruba DCA is now trying to improve and increase. But we probably in total we have the same rough number of those aircraft.
Okay, nice question from the audience. With so many alternatives, like the caps, what is the one difference between you and the others? Len?
I think the one difference is that we're both the registry and we're the authority. So there's no company involvement. It's strictly we're a regulatory authority.
Although that's the same as the Caymans.
Cayman, yeah, but they're not here. They don't count. They didn't pay their way.
Simon, what's the one?
We're exclusively business jet, private corporate.
Really?
Well, we don't have anything to do with British.
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Although San Marino doesn't either have anything. San Marino is an offshore registry, but surrounded by Italy rather than. What's the one difference?
Well, totally the opposite. We are a commercially run organization, so that brings all different aspects. And I think it's also important to understand what this person needs in reality. So I think it was discussed, it was mentioned earlier, that there is no one registry which fits for everybody. But I think it depends a lot on what the customer specific requirements are.
Okay. Filipe's raised Britain as a topic. How will Brexit, have you heard about that in the Isle of Man yet?
Believe it or not, yes. We had a pigeon arrive last week. This is one of the... we do actually have a single-strand copper cable under the RSC, which gives us something called the internet as well, which is remarkable.
AOL.
It's just dial-up modem. Brexit is a question I get asked about a great deal, and it's amazing the misperception and the misinformation that is out there about Brexit. I think this probably applies for certainly the other Crown dependencies and overseas territories, I hope. I won't speak for you.
Bailiwicks.
Yeah, but from my point of view, so our role is one of aviation safety regulator, one of registrar. Okay, that's it. Brexit makes no difference whatsoever to what I do. So we are ICAO compliant. We import best practice from around the world in terms of European or international regulations. But the political act that is Brexit affects my role not one jot.
And if I may add, I totally agree. We are on the same. We're basically regulated in exactly the same way. And let me add a typical question that we receive. We are not EASA. So if Brexit is going to have an impact on EASA, I think it still has to be seen. But we're not EASA, so that effect is also not going to be part of the equation.
Yeah, same for us.
And you're just enjoying watching it.
Yes, but yeah, they're right. It's, it doesn't affect it.
It's all going to be great. Relax. What is the preferred certification basis? FAA, EASA, or other? Filipe?
Well, we accept all of them. So FAA, EASA, ANAC, Brazil. We don't have a preferred one. We accept generally all those.
Same, we accept them all, and there is no preference. I think it's, as ever, for all of us, I think as overseas registries, is about trying to identify what the industry wants and supporting that as best as we can.
If I may, from an aircraft, from a commercial aircraft perspective, it really depends, well, of course, what the customer needs, but normally, nowadays we see a lot of requirements to fulfill EASA requirements because are seen at a higher level at the moment.
I guess one thing we're seeing a lot of is the trend towards, you've touched on this, but we've seen private registries now moving into AOCs. You know, Bermuda has got AOCs now. For a while, actually.
I think that's came in your
Sorry, you've got one, haven't you?
Well, we have one AOC of long-tail aviation based in Bermuda. So the issue with the AOCs is the principal place of business. ICAO doesn't define it very well, so there is some disagreement among ICAO member states as to what constitutes a principal place of business. So we have AOCs, but you have to meet the principal place of business requirements.
In 2Reg, we have issued 6 AOCs. 5 of them are still operating. It's a completely different business. It's a completely different set of skills required by the regulatory. Requires additional requirements to be fulfilled by the authority itself. So it's a completely different business.
Well, yeah, the same. The Aruba CA is now more focused on the AOCs. AOCs worldwide have, of course, the AOC regulation have much more stringent requirements than the private ones, and of course in Aruba, they have been updating, and last year it was a major update on the regulations to cope with these requirements, more updated requirements for the AOCs as well.
As a registry, is it much more work to oversee?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
And you're looking?
Looking. Well, the matter's always under review. I mean, I think, primarily we want to focus on the private stroke corporate, and I think there's a lot that can be done in that environment. I agree with the comments from the other panelists that moving to AOC is a step change, and, the fundamental tenet at the heart of that is protection of the fare-paying passenger. So if I'm buying a plane ticket and I want to fly from A to B, I want to have a good chance of getting there, and so the regulatory requirements and the oversight required are significantly higher, and I think if you're going to do it, you've got to do it really well.
Do you see the market for registries as getting more competitive? We're seeing more, and the Bahamas is coming, there's a couple of others coming. Do you see that as are you finding, Len, do you think it's becoming more competitive, more cutthroat? Can you have a cutthroat registry battle?
I think we have to be cautious here because there's some talk of some other registries starting up, and when you look at their safety oversight functions, they're very much lacking, and you're taking a risk that when you would put your aircraft on this registry, that you would be under intense scrutiny when you land somewhere, and they say, oh, you're with this registry, and the states know who the weak states are, and so you have to be very careful that you're going to align with pick a registry that has a good safety oversight record.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I mean, I think it's good, if I step back from my role, I think it's good that the business aviation client has choice, and that will always be a good thing. But then, of course, with choice sometimes becomes a more difficult decision, which is why I said what I did earlier, that you need to think really carefully about where you register your aircraft, as well as all of the other decisions that you've got to make. And I agree entirely with Len's comment. The path of least resistance isn't necessarily your best choice. Sometimes it's worth making that extra effort to get to the appropriate regulatory standards, and then hopefully you won't encounter the problems that some do.
Yeah, I totally agree. It makes a big difference whether the aircraft is registered, and the trust that this authority has worldwide and for ICAO. So it's obviously a major point.
Who do you see as your biggest competitor on this panel?
Honestly, I don't. That's not the way I look at it.
Because I'm blocking the view.
No, not at all. Actually, yeah, you weren't. No, I don't. That's certainly not my mindset, and that's my private view as well as my public view. There's no point in thinking like that. I think it's important that people choose the registry that suits them, and each of us offer slight differences, and certainly in terms of geography and time frame and all the rest of it that you can work on. So safety is my main concern.
Yeah, safety-wise, I think it's all three are great competitors, but obviously I think Aruba is best.
Is the best?
Yes.
Okay. That's a nice, honest, non-biased view. Len? Who do you see as on this panel, who do you see as your biggest competitor?
They're all tough competition, but I think the strength is that competition is good because it helps you to focus more, and we're looking at a lot of the innovation that's happening, and we're going to steal it when we need to, and we will.
God gave you eyes to plagiarize. Paolo?
I think, from my perspective, it's important to understand that it's not really the registry. The focus should not be on the registry only, but is overall on the states we represent, in a sense that when, especially, and this is especially true for business jets, I think, when looking at a solution where to register the aircraft, there are a number of topics to be covered. So where the tax, where the trust is based, and all of that. So it depends a lot on what the state has to offer on all these matters. And once all the boxes are checked, then it becomes important the service offered, availability, and cost, of course, for registering the aircraft. But I think there are a lot of pre-questions before even understanding which registry is better suited for the customer need.
A nice question from the audience. Time zones are an issue. Do any of you have plans to open an office in Asia?
From Toureg, we do not have an office in Asia. However, we have 18 surveyors, out of which 15 are based in Asia. So we do have a total coverage for Asia, even if we don't have an office.
Yeah, we've just established an office in Shanghai. We've been training our airworthiness inspector there for the last year. And he speaks very good Chinese as well.
Better than yours?
Much better.
Currently, we don't have an office out here like the other registries. We do have surveyors that are based internationally, so we can meet international demands. Like a lot of these things, it's something that I've got under review. I'm here, and we'll see how it goes for the future.
Yeah, the same. We have a team of surveyors and inspectors that have a global outreach, so we don't have other offices worldwide.
I'm also personally looking at launching the Spratly Islands register. I've just got to work out which authority it's under. It's hard work. Is BAO required? Question.
No, it isn't.
Do you want to explain this to anyone who...
Well, I think it's a great initiative. Anything that industry does to voluntarily raise the standard of safety, SMS, those sorts of things, I think is always to be applauded. So, yeah, IBAC is doing some great work in this regard, but no, it's not a requirement. I don't think we're any different to the others in that the requirements are ICAO Annex 6 Part 2.
Yes, in Bermuda, while it's not required, we do recognize ISBAO and give credit for it. So when you apply for registering your aircraft in Bermuda, it'll move much quicker and faster if you have a ISBAO certification already.
No, it's not required as well, but of course it's credited and it's well welcomed if the operator has it.
Okay, any old school questions? Final question then. How will your registry look in 2030?
Hopefully continue to grow, to continue to evolve how we work, and we may have gone commercial by then, but I don't know.
You had here first.
Well, hopefully 2030, hopefully the Aruba is still an island and is not submerged. But
Submarine registry.
yes.
Submarine registry.
Submarine registry.
We hope that we increase the number of AOCs. Obviously, that's the focus that we have now.
I think we'll continue to grow in 2030. I mean, that's very difficult. That's a long time away.
Same, we don't expect we are going to be growing with the same rate as we have done since the starting of the, we are definitely focused on AOC business as well.
The reason I picked 2030 is I thought that's when Brexit might be sorted. Or at least starting to. Thank you very much. Lunch is, I have no idea where lunch is. Somewhere in the hotel. You'll be pointed as you come out. And if we could all come back for whenever we're meant to be back. I also don't have the agenda. So professional. So thank you very much to the panel.
I mean,